Thank you, Donald. That's one of the things that makes this Conservative Leadership Conference a success is partnering with organizations like AFP and the other organizations you see out in the hallway and here talking. We do this to bring everybody together because you may be familiar with one of the organizations, but you may not be familiar with all the organizations. And so this is a chance to see all of them in one place and meet them and talk to the people involved. So before our next speaker comes up, I want to take this before everybody's up and running around and running off. I want to make sure I thank our staff, the Civitas staff, for putting on this because while I get to get up here and get the credit, they're the ones who did all the work. So if you'd give a hand to them, even though they're out there. And since you're the hardy ones who've gone the whole way, I'd like you to give yourselves a hand because we do this for you people. We want you to be involved and you're involved. So please give yourself a hand for coming to the conference. And if you'd like to see us keep doing this, donate. We are a nonprofit, so we'd appreciate donations. We'll have questions and answers at the end of this, so like I said, when he's done talking, don't run off. Our next speaker, whenever we do the CLC now, for the last few years, one of the first people I think of who I want to be there is Congressman Mark Meadows. I mean, and he knows it because we start reaching out to you as soon as we start our planning, and we bug him until we get an answer. And then if it's not the right answer, we bug him some more. So Congressman Meadows was first elected in January of 2000, or took office in January of 2013. Prior to that, he owned and operated his own business for 27 years. As Nigel talked last night, it's good to have people who have experience working in the private sector who built businesses and operated them instead of just have spent their whole lives in politics. In November of 2016, he was elected chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. And you may remember there was something about introducing a resolution about a certain speaker named Boehner that may have resulted in him moving on to other forms of work. And with him is his wife, Debbie, and we're happy she's attended, so we appreciate that. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Congressman Meadows to come up and share his wisdom with us.
Well, good afternoon. I want to encourage you and say it is about time we get some things done. It is about time. And so that is the message that I want to share. And I'm going to open it up for questions afterwards. If they're very difficult questions, I'll let my wife answer them. But I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for the job you do. Thank you for the power that I have because of your voice. That's the only power I have, is really the voice of the people. And sometimes members of Congress forget that. They get up there and they think they're smarter and funnier than they really are. And so it is incumbent upon us to have a reality check. So I'm going to talk to you as family members today and kind of give you the behind the scenes if that's what you would like to know. I could do this prepared speech and it would sound much better than perhaps what I'm going to, but I'm going to give you behind the scenes because I think you want the real story, don't you? All right, so I'm here to tell you that you will get all kinds of promises from members of Congress on both sides of the aisle who say they're going to pound their chest and get something done, and they go to Washington, D.C., and they forget it. They don't get anything done. Winston Churchill used to say, no matter how beautiful the strategy, we must occasionally look at the results. And the results have not been too great. And I think it's time that we change that. And if members of Congress on both sides of the aisle, if he can't see the light, we need to make him feel the heat. And it's about time that if they don't start changing things, that you send them home. Myself included. It is time that we get things done. So I'm going to share a little bit because here are some things that I think we need to get done. We actually need to repeal and replace Obamacare instead of talking about it like we have for the last 7 years and get it done. So the behind the scenes, I'm one of the few members of Congress that have been tweeted at by the president in a less than flattering way. Now, when that happened, I can tell you I was on a flight from D.C. to Charlotte, and I had turned my phone off according to FAA regulations. By the way, if you have your phone on, it does not affect the navigation of an airplane. I just want to let you know that. But if, I had turned it off, and when I got there to Charlotte, I turned on my phone, finding out that the president had tweeted at me about the health care debate. Well, when you've turned it off and you turn it on and the president has tweeted at you, you become tweet famous. And I'm telling you, the phone went to going like this. It was vibrating all over the place. I was getting calls from Beijing to Bangor, Maine, wanting me to comment on the president's tweet. Well, I say that because that was probably one of the lowest days that I've had under the Trump administration. The president had been convinced by members of our party that it was a great bill, even though only 17% of Americans believed that it was a good bill. In fact, I can tell you that not even 17% of the members of Congress had actually even read the bill. And I ended up getting a PhD. I see my friend from Blue Cross Blue Shield here today. Thank you for your sponsorship of this event. Sometimes they get pushback for sponsoring conservative events. So I think the sponsors need a round of applause for what they do. But I can tell you, having read the bill, I now have a PhD in healthcare. It was never on my bucket list. I never wanted to do that. But I understood that as we read the bill, we had to do one thing: lower premiums for Americans across the board. And that bill didn't do it. Well, the president came to find out that actually that bill didn't do it. So we worked to make it a little bit better. Here's where we are so that you know. In the Senate, there are a number of people that are working, and it's not just the Ted Cruz and the Mike Lees, but it's them working with others in the GOP Senate that truly are looking from very different states on how we work that out. And I can tell you that the progress that they're making is real. I'm optimistic that we will have a bill on the president's desk by the middle of July where he will finally sign it and bring premiums down and start to bring it back to where we need to make it affordable again for all Americans. And it's real work happening behind the scenes. But I also want to tell you this. We have gotten to a point, and you heard it earlier today, where on college campuses we have free speech zones. Now, when most of you went to college or when you were encouraged, the entire campus was a free speech zone, that's where we are. So here would be my recommendation. If we're going to have free speech zones on college campuses, which receive federal funding, I think they can be free of something else, which is the American taxpayer dollars, and we need to make sure that we have free speech every day. Now, that's not just rhetoric, because what happens is they're free to do whatever they want. They're just not free to do it with our taxpayer dollars. And when you have a university, I think it was in New Hampshire, that decided that they weren't going to put up the American flag and they weren't going to salute the American flag, they're okay to do that. Just do it with private funds, not with federal funds. I think it's time that we understand we serve a country who not only pledges allegiance to that flag, but men and women in the military have died and fought for that freedom, and they need to recognize that. Now, we need to get serious. So here's the backstory. Some people will make great orations about what we need to do. And then they go to Washington, D.C. They may even, I heard it earlier today, sponsor a bill that says that we need to do that, from religious liberty to everything else. And then they hope that the bill doesn't come up for a vote so that they don't have to take a tough vote. It is incumbent upon everybody here to make sure that your member of Congress not only co-sponsors things, but then promotes them to come to the floor. Because the time is now that we get this stuff done. Time is now. Enough with messaging bills, it is time. So whether it is religious liberty, we have over 200 people signed on a religious liberty bill, 200 Republicans. But yet, when the leadership asks about, would you vote for that if it comes up on the floor, we have over 200 co-sponsors, only 180 would vote for it on the floor, which means that there's at least 20 that are hypocritical with the fact that they're co-sponsoring and not wanting to vote. So we need to get to who are they? I love it. I mean, this is the crowd, we'll go after them. But here's the thing, is that hypocritical side of things needs to stop. The people that you elect in North Carolina and send to Washington, D.C. need to be the same ones that arrive there on Capitol Hill. They need to be the same there as they are here. And if not, just because they have an R or a D behind their name doesn't make them righteous. All right? We need to make sure that we hold them accountable. So let me go on a little bit further. Tom earlier talked about investigations. We're off on this whole investigation about the Russian influence, and certainly we don't want Russians influencing our election. But to suggest that this president colluded with the Russians to actually make hundreds of thousands of people vote a certain way is just ludicrous, guys. I'm just telling you, it's ludicrous, and we need to stand up. And Tom's right. There's a lot of members that run for the hills. They won't stand up. I was talking to the president the other day. He says, well, Mark, and he called me because I had gone on TV to defend him, and he says, well, Mark, I just wanted to call and say thank you for standing up on national TV to say that this is ridiculous. He says, your wife knows more about Russia than I do. And true quote. And so here's what we have to do, is we have to stand up even if it means it may send us home. It's time that we stand up as members of Congress. When I signed up for this job, it was a temporary job. It was not a permanent job. And we know that if I make certain decisions, it may send me home. But so be it. We have sent more subpoenas on the Russian investigation than we did the entire Benghazi investigation. There's something wrong with that, guys. There is something wrong with that. When we had 4 Americans that died, and we sent 2 subpoenas, and we've already sent 7 subpoenas to check about Russian influence. I talked to them the other day. I talked to some Russian scholars. They are laughing at the credit they're getting. They're saying you're giving us far too much credit. How's that for a North Carolina guy to give you a Russian influence? How about that? So they're saying we're giving them far too much credit. And you know what? We are. We live in a republic that is defined by a constitution that should have voter integrity. But you know what? We're the ones responsible for that. We're the ones that need to make sure that we stand up and say, enough is enough. Thank God for people like Tom and the work he does. He actually gets more information than the Oversight Committee gets. So what's the problem with that? Why should Tom be able, from an outsider's point of view, to be able to get more information than somebody on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee? Because you know what? Sometimes our leadership doesn't want to fight. Sometimes what they would do is rather look the other way and say, well, let's be prepared for the next election. So I am being honest with you guys today, and you know what? It's going to get me in trouble. But so be it. I think it's important that we know that if we're going to investigate, and I'm here to tell you that we may want to investigate Donald Trump on the Russia stuff, but there's a whole lot of stuff about the Clinton Foundation that continues to go along. There's a whole lot of stuff that actually needs to be investigated, and the time is now to not give up. So let me close with one other thing. It's a request. As each of you have looked around, and I look in some of your eyes, and honestly, I know some of you really well. You send me emails. I actually read them. And so on those emails that you write, here's what I want you to do, is make sure that those emails go to someone that's outside of the comfort zone. You know, because it's real easy to encourage us when we're all talking to one another and say we need to do this. But sometimes it's not as easy to tell your family members. You're going to have to see them at Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it's not as easy to stand up, right? Because you're going to have to break bread with them. But just like if Francis had not kept calling me and saying, please come and speak to this wonderful group. And by the way, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the work that Civitas does. I mean, it is a great, great work. This podium would have been filled by somebody. Somebody would have gotten here to give a speech or to encourage you or discourage you. And I'm here to tell you that I need you to take the podium in your community and make sure that you do it. To make sure that you reach out, because here's a president that truly needs to get his agenda done. I'm there, well, since the media will probably cover it, I'm there occasionally, but I have communication with the president on a regular basis. This is a president that is so serious about his campaign promises. I think Tom talked about it. There is a war room just off of the Oval Office. It has every single campaign promise that he made, where he made it, when he made it, and with the date on there. And they're checking it off to say, we've done this one, we've done that one. I can tell you that it's there because I've seen it dozens of times. It is there. They are serious. And when they don't check something off on a given week, there is trouble in the West Wing. But here's where the other part of the trouble is. It's on Capitol Hill. We have not, you know, and my good friend Mark Walker talked about some of those things and the work that we're doing, and he's right with the regulation rollback. There was significant work, in fact, historical work that was done there. But the rest of it is naming post offices, guys. I mean, and I don't know about you, but most of the constituents, some of whom are here from Western North Carolina, didn't send me to Congress to name post offices. They sent me to repeal and replace Obamacare. They sent me to reduce taxes. They sent me to make sure that we put people back to work again. It's important that we do that. They sent me there to fix the VA finally and give our veterans the kind of service that they deserve. So I want you to do two things. If we don't get health care fixed by the end of July, and we don't get tax reform introduced and out of the House by July, I want you to join me in saying that we need to cancel our August recess and stay there until we get it done. Would you do that? It is about time that we produce some results. And the president is with us on that. He's frustrated with the fact that not much is coming out of Capitol Hill because, you know, they're saying, well, we'll get to that. This is not a fine wine. It does not improve with time. I'm here to tell you, we got to get it done. And the very last, encourage the president. Because he is there in the West Wing, and quite frankly, he's getting all kinds of advice. And as a business guy, he knows that the only thing he'll be judged on is results. And yet what he gets are a lot of excuses coming from a number of different ways. So if you pray for this president, encourage this president, and I can tell you that Debbie and I are doing that. He actually likes Debbie a lot better than I do. I mean, he gets to the point. So when I say that wrong. Oh no, not better than I do. That'll go better. Okay, that'll be a viral moment there. All right. Please do not tweet that out. I can see it now. Yeah. I said that wrong. Actually, he likes her better than he likes me is what I meant to say. All right. So she's the real conservative in the bunch. And so I would say this. We're going to open up for questions. We have a great country. we have an unbelievable nation. And you know what? I'm not ready to give up on it yet, and I hope you aren't either. And so as we look at that, may God continue to bless this great country of ours, and with your voice and with your help in the trenches on behalf of millions of Americans who think they've been forgotten as the forgotten man or woman, we will take this country back once and for all with God's help. God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to serve. Bob, since you were the one that got me in the hall and said, would you answer questions, I figured at least you should be able to ask one, right?
Thank you. Every year I pick up the newspaper or online news and I read where some mom and pop has had their savings account absconded by the IRS. And to quote, was it Amendment 5? No property without due process. So I am asking you to do what you can to rein in the IRS, please. Thank you.
Thank you. We saw during the whole Lois Lerner thing the power of the IRS, and really it went well beyond that. It went to other agencies, and it's all about due process. And that's why, Tom's comment about the president, he's not above the law, but he's not below it either. We need to have due process and make sure that those checks are in place. We're focusing on that in oversight, and I think you'll see some more robust looking into the IRS, as well as a few other agencies, but specifically that's my commitment to you, Bob. We'll go forward.
When you're speaking with the president, would you ask him to do something for all of us? And that is maybe about 3 times a month, get out someplace and just talk directly to the American people. If he's got a war room of what's going on, give us a report. Give us a report on how things are going. What's he working on, what's he going to be working on, but just talk to the American people, because otherwise it's just never going to be covered.
I will share that with the president directly. I know he loves to do that, and in fact he's talking about scheduling a trip to come back here to North Carolina, and so we'll get that scheduled, but I'll mention it to him.
I'm Steve Herring from Wayne County, and I would like to know why, being we got control of the House and the Senate, why we couldn't create a law saying every ounce of ground in America is free speech zone. In other words, we've got it in the Constitution, guaranteed by the Constitution, but that law would back up the Constitution, and that way these people could be prosecuted that won't allow free speech. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Honestly, we have the Constitution there that we should be in really supporting, and so we have the power of the purse. And what we really need to be doing is that if agencies or people who get federal funds are violating that, I think we have to have the intestinal fortitude. Now, the problem with that is that's not always popular. But the other part of that is if we don't address it. I can tell you it's so bad at one school in Georgia that my son happens to know about is that they wrote Trump actually in the free speech zone in chalk, and people were afraid of a chalk written about Trump. I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. I can tell you those kinds of college graduates are not the kind that I would hire in the private sector. If they're afraid of the little chalk drawing, they're afraid of a lot of other things, all right? Yeah.
Just heard on conservative talk radio something that concerned me greatly, and I'd love to know if you've seen it in action, and that is that a number of Republican representatives, I'm not sure if that included senators, are holding back on supporting certain of the Trump agenda because they think he's going to be gone, and if it should change under Pence, they don't want to be seen supporting something of a deposed president. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I don't know that there's real truth to that in terms of holding back on legislative agendas. I mean, some of them may use as an excuse. Most of the time, people just don't want to go on record. Senators don't like to vote on anything because that way they can say that they're one way or another and you don't have a vote. We vote a lot more than that, but a lot of times, some of our more moderate friends don't want a conservative bill to come up because they would have to vote against it. So I don't see it as much as that. I think where the real problem is there's not the defense of this president that we saw from the Democrats on President Obama. And there's a real problem there. And we've got to do a better job of that. Thank you.
Carter Hunt from Raleigh. I'm a third-generation family-owned business, and we provide health insurance for our employees and want to continue to do that. We have material and labor costs that go up. Sometimes we have to bump our prices about 5% a year, 3%. We get some pushback from our customers. Our health insurance last year went up 41%. What caused that? I'm not directly involved in that part of the business. What caused that, and what can you guys offer that can, are we just covering a lot more people that had no insurance? Are more things being covered? What's causing that, and what can you guys do to stop that?
Well, I think both of those things. We're covering more things, and we're covering more people that actually causes it. And here's the interesting thing is everybody wants to say, well, it's all the insurance fault, or it's all this fault or that fault. The truth of the matter is it's numbers, and when you look at it. So I'm going to pick on you, and I'm going to pick on Tammy, all right? So I'm going to pick on you. Let's say that you're a 21-year-old, and you have 5 speeding tickets, and you drive a red Corvette, all right? And Tammy, I'm going to say that she is older than that, more mature and more responsible, no speeding tickets, drives a Buick or an Oldsmobile, that, doesn't ever get above 65 miles an hour, all right? What we've done in the insurance business is said, well, you at 21 years of age and 5 speeding tickets and a red Corvette should get the same insurance premium that Tammy gets, and we try to insure you the same way. Now, there are other anomalies that go the other way with older people and younger people, but we have to start to allow insurance to be insurance again. And what we've done is, I'm old enough to remember Major Medical. And, and now what we've done is we've gone from Major Medical to, that it covers everything from a hangnail to, and we cover that. Well, that's expensive. And so when we get to that, somebody has to pay for that. Now, then there's the other side of that is the personal responsibility side of it. When everything is paid for, you have a tendency to use it a lot more than you would. If I gave you a gift card for $1,000, you would go out and spend the $1,000 and you wouldn't really pay attention. Now, if it's your own $1,000, you might be a little bit more cautious on what you bought. Do you really need it? Do you need a 400-pound teddy bear? I mean, whatever it is, I mean, as you look at it, we just have to have that individual responsibility and bring that back to the market. We're working with some of our folks to try to do that. But eventually, as Margaret Thatcher says, you run out of other people's money. And that's where we are. We're running out of other people's money, and it's time that we get back. So hopefully we'll rein that in and allow the premiums to come down.
I'm Wilson from Orange County. Is the new health care law going to expand health savings accounts? Current law allows you to make a once-in-a-lifetime transfer from an IRA to an HSA, and I would like to see it allow you to make an unlimited number of transfers as you need it. And is it going to allow anybody to establish an HSA, or is it going to require them to buy a health insurance policy that allows them to do it?
Well, I think the second part is probably more critical than the first part. Yes, it is going to address HSAs. I don't know if it's limited. We've talked about increasing the amount that you can contribute to an HSA. In truth, only 2% of the population actually takes advantage of the maximum number on HSAs anyways. And so even if you elevated that, I don't know that it would do a whole lot of good. What would do a lot of good is if you allow the HSAs to actually buy your insurance policy so that you have the tax-deferred part of that. We're working very closely to try to do that, whether it's through HSAs or something else.
Is this on? Jay Stobbs from Chatham County. I got a tough one for you. I'm not optimistic we're ever going to get our spending and budget under control until Congress gets back to doing the 12 authorization and 12 appropriation bills like they used to do 10 years ago until Harry Reid changed it. When are we going to get back to doing it? Because I'm afraid these big omnibus spending bills, no one reads them, the pork gets folded in there, and we know what's going on out here. We need to get some control on that spending because we elected you guys, not you, I'm just saying in general, to cut the spend and get that budget under control, so please help us out here.
Yeah, the 12 appropriations bills, I don't see that happening this year, and quite frankly, I see over and over again every year we talk about doing it and we don't. That would actually fix a whole lot. We actually, as the Freedom Caucus, put in a rule called the Holman Rule, which actually allowed us to kind of surgically go after some of that spending. And so there's a fight that's going to happen in the next week to 10 days on the budget. For us, we believe that there's one critical component that has to be in there. It's about time that we have welfare reform, guys. And let me just say, we can fill thousands of jobs in North Carolina if someone would just do two things: pass a drug test and show up to work. Now, that's a pretty low bar. I mean, it is time that we actually get them to do that. So the Freedom Caucus has taken an official position that says that we need to put a work requirement on SNAP and TANF. And it says that, get this, if you don't work 20 hours a week is all, 20 hours a week, and you're an able-bodied adult with non-dependent children, we're not talking about grandparents who are taking care of their grandkids or anything else, but if you're able-bodied adult, that you should be working, either working or vocational training or volunteering for your government agency. If you do one of those three things, you qualify and you can do it. Guess what? When they put those in Maine, 72% of the people got off of the rolls. In Alabama, just the other day, 85% got off the rolls. It's time that we put the value back in work and make it work again for the American people, and we're going to do that. Yeah. All right, I get one last question is what I hear. I'm getting the hook. I'll have to answer yours afterwards. You've had your hand up a long time, and so before we get out of there, I'll answer it. All right.
Yes, sir. Tom Glendenning, also from Chatham County. How are we ever going to rebuild an economy without manufacturing, number one? And number two, how do we ever recoup any confidence in the economy with the Fed at 0%? Well, 0.25, whatever you want to call it. But basically, this is not the economy I grew up with. I'm coming from a manufacturing city, and I don't recognize it. I don't see where we're headed.
Well, we obviously need to start creating things again, and you know, Made in America is a good thing, and it was always seen as a design of quality and everything else. And now what we've done is we have a new logo called Assemble in the United States, not Made in the United States, and that's a problem. So we need to get back to doing that. I do think that some of the manufacturing is coming back. Really, it gets back down to taxes, guys. Who wants to invest in a country who has the highest corporate tax rate in the world? I mean, if you have a choice and you're a business guy, let me just tell you, you go to the place where you have favorable treatment. And so we need to actually do that. We believe that you need to lower the corporate tax rates, that both not on big corporations but small corporations, where it actually goes through to the individual, to 18 to 20%. You start doing that, people start investing back in the United States, and we do that. Obviously, 0% interest or thereabouts is quantitative easing. The real problem with a $20 trillion debt, you know, the interesting thing is we're paying the same amount on our debt today because of interest rates that we did when the deficit, I mean, when our debt was at $3 trillion. So we just lowered the interest rate so that our interest expense is not any higher. Can you imagine what happens when we go back to normal rates? It will be devastating. But we've got to get back and get this economy growing again. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Thank you for being in the fight. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.